As Leah and I were just discussing, just a run-of-the-mill December 19th college football game in Knoxville between Texas A&M and Tennessee. Of course, on SEC Championship weekend as well. We got Leah Musgrave on the line from TexAggs.com to help us break it down. Leah, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm good, not to mention that early signing day is in the mix in there as well. So it is just a crazy time of year. Now basketball's starting to. It is just a lot going on, but looking forward to one last go at it in Tennessee this weekend.
Yeah, Jimbo Fisher with another nice haul of athletes for the 2021 class, but let's focus on what's going on this weekend. And it's just an interesting scenario concerning Texas A&M without the ability to win a conference championship. The one team in the mix that is being discussed and heavily debated as a number 5 team in the country, Florida losing, of course, this past weekend. So your thoughts about the college football ranking and Texas A&M's path to a possible playoff spot?
Yeah, and if A&M loses or barely squeezes by Tennessee, then they're actually no longer in this conversation at all. So all of this is contingent on the Aggies taking care of business in Knoxville on Saturday. As far as where they stand right now, we know that the committee respects A&M's body of work so far, but it does kind of feel like there's still a national bias maybe against A&M, and they're kind of fighting to be taken seriously in the national conversation. Part of that, like you said, is because they're not playing for a conference championship. All I'm going to say is that this team has improved tremendously from a rocky start to the year. They're rolling on 5 consecutive SEC wins by double-digit points, and if they play sound football this weekend, it could be 6. And that has garnered some national attention, and I think rightfully so. And I'm not sitting here saying that A&M is one of the best 4 teams in the country. I'm not saying that they would beat Ohio State or win in a rematch against Alabama even, but what I am saying is that they will have played 9 games by the end of the weekend, and their resume has probably got to be stronger than just about anyone else in college football besides Alabama and maybe Notre Dame. So I think they do make a solid argument. They need some help, though. They're not going to get on there. They're not going to get into the college football playoff on their own. There's nothing that you can do against Tennessee that's going to put you above Ohio State. That's just kind of the truth right now. And eventually you want to get to the point where you're playing so well that you can't be left out of the top 4, and you're not trying to edge your way in like A&M is doing right now. Personally, I don't think A&M makes it in, but I think an Orange Bowl or a Cotton Bowl bid is still definitely something to be excited about. And if you're an A&M fan this weekend, you are rooting hard for Notre Dame to beat Clemson. And then if Clemson gets up by 2 scores, you're actually probably switching, and you probably want Clemson to win by 4 touchdowns there. So that's what makes this 4th spot so interesting. But I actually probably think that that's a little bit more likely than Northwestern beating Ohio State. So definitely a big gap between 4 and 5, but really excited to see how this thing plays out.
Oh, come on, Leah. We saw a 23-point underdog in LSU go to the Swamp last weekend, so Northwestern can do it.
You'll never know. I mean, if LSU showed us anything last week, it is that you cannot take a single game for granted in this league or in college football in general.
There we go. We got Leah Musgrave on the line from TexAggs.com, has joined us throughout the season, tracking a college football playoff contender in a very unique situation as we head to championship weekend. With in any other year where there has been a team in this situation without a conference championship to play for, but with a resume this strong, they haven't had that last audition. So at least Texas A&M goes on the road and can show one last time what they've got.
Yeah, this is an incredibly important week for A&M. We've been talking on our show this week about how this is probably the most important week for A&M, at least in the college football playoff era. And they're having to prove something on the road at Tennessee, which is a pretty hard place to play. So they've got to go win convincingly. They've got to go in there with their foot on the gas, and they've got to be in control for 4 quarters. And I am fully expecting Tennessee to bring their A game this weekend, because really they have nothing to lose and probably a lot to gain by upsetting the 5th-ranked team in the country. As for what the Volunteers are doing right now, I don't know how many style points A&M is going to get from this one, but they have to have, like I said, a convincing win. Tennessee right now is giving up just under 400 yards a game, and they're pretty solid against the run. A&M is going to have to be balanced offensively, and they're going to have to limit the careless mistakes to have a good, sound performance in Knoxville. Defensively, I like A&M's pass rush against a young quarterback. Tennessee is good on the ground. That's what they do best, and I expect them to run the ball to be effective. And I'm actually excited to see what they do in the passing game, because that's been a bit of a question mark for them this year, but that's improved dramatically for them the last few weeks. So this probably is a game that A&M should win at the line of scrimmage, but it's another week in the SEC, so they have to stay focused on the task at hand, and they can't let this one slip away on Saturday because really everything is on the line for them right now with your hopes of a trip to the playoff for sure.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We break down the game we all love each and every day with the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry. We've got Leah Musgrave on the line, Texas A&M taking on Tennessee in Knoxville. And because of that national spotlight and it being what it is and not tracking the team necessarily week to week to week, that LSU effort offensively stands out as a criticism versus a very deep schedule. I think it's important that Texas A&M comes out, as you mentioned, offensively and showcases themselves as a elite team.
Yeah, and it's funny too because now when we look at the LSU-Florida game that happened last week, A&M's win over Florida doesn't look as good, but their win over LSU now looks a little bit better. So really interesting scenario here, but honestly, A&M is the only team that can beat itself this week. So they've just got to put the pieces together because they are playing for a lot right now.
Leah, we know that it's a grind at this point of the calendar year. Christmas is coming and you've got football and basketball to deal with at the same time. So we appreciate you stopping by.
Absolutely, Mark. Thanks so much for having me.